Welcome, and thank you for being here. Tonight, we're about to wander softly into one of the most magical fairy tales ever shared. There's nothing expected of you. Simply get comfortable, slow your breathing, and let the weight of the day quietly fade. If this place feels warm or soothing to you, you're always invited to stay a little longer by liking the video or subscribing, but only if it feels natural. I cherish knowing where these stories are heard. So if you'd like, leave a comment sharing where you're listening from and what hour the night has arrived for you. Now, dim the lights, let a gentle sound settle around you, and allow yourself to drift peacefully, unhurried, into tonight's story. The Little Green Ones. A rose tree drooped in the window. Not so long ago, it was green and blooming, but now it looked sickly. Something was wrong with it. A regiment of invaders were eating it up. And by the way, it was a very decent and respectable regiment, dressed in green uniforms. I spoke to one of the invaders. He was only 3 days old, but already a grandfather. Do you know what he said? Well, what he said is all true. He spoke of himself and the rest of the invaders. Listen, we're the strangest regiment of creatures in the world. Our young ones are born in the summertime, for the weather is pleasant then. We're engaged and have the wedding at once. When it gets cold, we lay our eggs, and the little ones are snug and warm. The ant that wisest of creatures. We have a great deal of respect for him, studies us, and appreciates us. He doesn't eat us up all at once. Instead, he takes our eggs and lays them out on the ground floor of his and his family's anthill. Stores layer after layer of them, all labeled and numbered side by side, so that every day a new one may creep out of the egg. Then he keeps us in a stable, pinches our hind legs, and milks us, and then we die. It is really a great pleasure. The ants have the prettiest name for us, Little Milch Cow. All creatures who have the common sense that the ant has call us that. It's only humans who don't, and that is an insult great enough to embitter all our lives. Couldn't you write us a protest against it? Couldn't you put those people in their rightful place? They look at us so stupidly, look at us with jealous eyes, just because we eat rose leaves, while they eat everything that's created, everything that is green or grows. Oh, they give us the most despicable, the most distasteful name. I won't even repeat it. It turns my stomach. No, I won't repeat it. At least, not when I'm wearing my uniform. And I am always wearing my uniform. I was born on a rose leaf. My whole regiment and I live off the rose tree. But then it lives again in us, who are of a higher order of beings. Humans detest us. They come and kill us with soap suds. That's a horrible drink. I seem to smell it even now. It's dreadful to be washed when you're born not to be washed. Man, you who look at us with your stupid soap-sud eyes, consider what our place in nature is. Consider our artistic way of laying eggs and breeding children. We have been blessed to accomplish and multiply. We are born on the roses, and we die in the roses. Our whole life is a lovely poem. Don't call us by that name which you yourself think most despicable and ugly. The name I can't bear to speak or to repeat. Instead, call us the ants' milch cows, the rose tree regiment, the little green ones. And I, the man, stood looking at the tree and at the little green ones, whose name I'll not mention, for I shouldn't like to hurt the feelings of a citizen of the rose tree, a large family with eggs and youngsters. And the soap suds I was going to wash them in, for I had come with soap and water and evil intentions. I'll blow it to foam and use it for soap bubbles instead. Look at the splendor. Perhaps there's a fairy tale in each. And the bubble grows so large with radiant colors, looking as if there were a silver pearl lying inside it. The bubble swayed and drifted to the door and burst. But the door sprung wide open, and there was Mother Fairy Tale herself. Yes, now she will tell you better than I can about, I won't say the name, the little green ones. Tree lice, said Mother Fairy Tale. You should call things by their right names. If you do not always dare to do so, you should at least be able to do it in a fairy tale. Godfather's Picture Book. Godfather could tell stories, so many of them, and such long ones, and he could cut out paper figures and draw pictures. When it was nearly Christmas, he would bring out a scrapbook with clean white pages, and on these he pasted pictures cut out of books and newspapers. And if there weren't enough for the story he was going to tell, he drew them himself. When I was a little boy, I got several of these picture books, but the prettiest of them all was the one from that memorable year when gas replaced the old oil lamps in Copenhagen. And that was the inscription written on the first page. We must take great care of this book, said Father and Mother, and only bring it out on important occasions. But Godfather had written on the cover, if you should tear the book, that's not a great wrong. Other little friends have done worse for ever so long. Best of all were the times when Godfather himself showed the book read the verses and other writings in it, and told many things besides. Then the story would become a very real one. On the first page was a picture from the Flying Post showing Copenhagen with its round tower and Our Lady's Church. On its left was pasted an old lantern on which was written train oil, and on the right was a chandelier with gas written on it. See, that's the title page said, Godfather. That's the beginning of the story you're going to hear. It could also be given as an entire play if one could perform it. Train, Oil and Gas, or The Life and Times of Copenhagen. That's a very good title. At the bottom of the page is still another little picture. It's quite hard to understand, so I'll explain it to you. That is a hell horse. He shouldn't have come until the end of the book, but he has run on ahead to say that neither the beginning, nor the middle, nor the end is any good. He could have done it much better, if he could have done it at all. The hell horse you see stands hitched all day in the newspaper and walks on the columns, they say. But in the evening, he slips out, stations himself outside the poet's door, and neighs so that the man inside will instantly die. But he won't die if there's any real life in him. The hell horse is usually a poor creature who can't understand himself and can't earn a living, and he gets his air and food by going around and neighing. I am certain that he doesn't like Godfather's picture book, but in spite of that, it may be worth at least the paper it's written on. Now that's the first page of the book. That's the title page. It was the very last evening on which the oil lamps were to be lighted. The town had gas, and it was so bright that the old street lamps seemed quite lost in it. I was in the street myself that evening, said Godfather. The people were walking about, looking at the old and the new lighting. There were a great many people, and twice as many legs as heads. The watchmen stood around sadly, for they didn't know how soon they would be dismissed, like the oil lamps. They could remember so far back, but dared not think forward. They had so many memories of quiet evenings and dark nights. I leaned up against a lamppost, continued Godfather, and there was a great spluttering in the oil and the wick. I could hear what the lamp said, and you shall hear it too. We've done the best we could, said the lamp. We were good enough for our time and have lighted up joy and sorrow. We have lived through many wonderful things. You might say we have been the night eyes of Copenhagen. Now, let new lights take our place and take over our duties. But how many years they'll shine, and what they will light up, remain to be seen. Indeed, they shine a little stronger than we old fellows, but that's nothing. When you're molded like a gas chandelier and have the connections, they have the one pours into the other. They have pipes going in all directions and can get strength from both inside the town and outside it. But each one of us oil lamps shines because of what he has in himself, and not because of any family connections. We and our ancestors have lighted Copenhagen from olden times from immeasurably long ago. But since this is now the last evening that will stand and shine, in the second row, so to speak, in the street here along with you, you shining comrades, we won't sulk or be envious. No, far from it. We'll be happy and good-natured. We are the old sentinels being relieved by new guards in better uniforms than ours. We'll tell you what our family way back to great-great-great-grandmother Lantern has seen and experienced. The whole history of Copenhagen. May you and your successors right down to the last gas chandelier experience and be able to relate such wonderful things as we can when you get your discharge someday. And you'll get it. You may be sure of that. People are certain to find a better light than gas. I've heard a student say that there's a possibility they may someday burn seawater. When the lamp said these words, the wick spluttered as if it had water in it already. Godfather had listened closely, thought it over, and decided it was an excellent idea of the old lantern on this evening of the change from oil to gas to tell and display the whole history of Copenhagen. You mustn't let a good idea slip, said Godfather. I took it, at once went home, and made this picture book for you. It goes even farther back in time than the lamps could go. Here's the book, and here's the story. Copenhagen's life and times. It begins in darkness, on a coal black page. That's the Dark Ages. Now let's turn the page, said Godfather. Do you see the picture? Only the wild sea and the swelling northeast wind driving heavy ice flows before it. There's no one out sailing on them, only great stone blocks which rolled down onto the ice from the mountains of Norway. The north wind blows the ice away. He wants to show the German mountains what rocks are found up in the north. The ice floes are already down in the Sound off the coast of Zealand, where Copenhagen now stands. But there was no Copenhagen there then. There were great sandbanks under the water, and the ice floes with the big boulders struck against one of these. Then the whole ice field stuck so fast that the northeast wind couldn't move it again, and so he became as furious as could be, and pronounced a curse on the sandbank, the thieves' ground, as he called it. He swore that if ever it should rise above the surface of the sea, thieves and robbers would live there, and the gallows and wheel be raised on it. But while he cursed and swore this way, the sun came out, and those bright and gentle spirits, the children of light, swayed and swung in its beams. They danced over the ice floes until they melted, and the great boulders sank to the sandy bottom of the sea. Sun gum, said the northeast wind. Is that friendship and kinship I'll remember, and take revenge for that. Now I pronounce a curse. We pronounce a blessing. sang the children of light. The sandbank will rise, and we shall guard it. Truth, goodness, and beauty shall dwell there. Stuff and nonsense, said the northeast wind. You see, the lantern knew nothing of all this, and therefore couldn't tell about it, said Godfather. But I know it, and it's very important to the life and times of Copenhagen. Now we'll turn the page, said Godfather. Years have passed, and the sandbank has lifted itself. A seagull has settled on the biggest rock, which has jutted out of water. You can see it in the picture. Years and years have passed. The sea cast up dead fish onto the shore. Tough lime grass sprang up, withered, rotted, and fertilized the soil. Many different kinds of grasses and plants followed until the bank became a green island. There the Vikings landed, for there was level ground for fighting and good anchorage beside the island off the coast of Zealand. I think the first oil lamp was lit to cook fish over, and there were plenty of fishes here. The herring swam through the sound in great shoals. It was hard to force a boat through them. They glittered in the water as if there were lightning down there, and shone in the depths like the northern lights. The Sound had a wealth of fishes. Therefore, houses were built on the coast of Zealand, with walls of oak and roofs of bark. There were trees enough for that purpose. Ships anchored in the harbor, oil lamps hanging from swaying ropes, and the northeast wind blew and sang, "Oh, out." If a lantern glimmered on the island, it was a thieves' lantern for smugglers, and thieves plied their trade on Thieves' Island. I believe that all the evil I wished for is coming, said the northeast wind. Soon the tree will come from which I can shake the fruit. And here is the tree, said Godfather. Do you see the gallows on Thieves' Island? Robbers and murderers hang there in iron chains exactly as they hung in those days. The wind blew until it rattled the long skeletons, but the moon shone down on them as serenely as it now shines on a country dance. The sun also shone down pleasantly, crumbling away the dangling skeletons, and from the sunbeams the children of light sang, "We know it, we know it. Here it shall be beautiful in the days to come. Here it shall be good and splendid." Chicken prattle, said the northeast wind. Now we'll turn the page, said Godfather. The bells were ringing in the town of Roskilde, where Bishop Absalon lived. He could both read his Bible and wield his sword. He had power and will. He wished to protect from assault the busy fishermen at the harbor, whose town had grown until it was now a market town. He sprinkled the unhallowed ground with holy water. Thus Thieves' Island received the mark of honor. Masons and carpenters set to work on it. At the bishop's command, a building grew up, and the sunbeams kissed the red walls as they rose. There stood the house of Axel. The castle with its towers so stately and high had balconies and stairs up to the sky. Boo, hoo. The northeast wind huffed and puffed, but the castle stood unyielding, unroughed, and outside it lay the haven, the merchant's harbor, mermaid's bower amid seas of sheen, built beside groves of green. The foreigners came there and bought the wealth of fish, and built shops and houses with bladders for window panes, as glass was too expensive. Warehouses followed with giedels and windlasses. See the old fellows sitting there in the shops. They dare not marry. They trade in ginger and pepper, the Pebersvende. The northeast wind whistled through the streets and lanes, sending the dust flying and tearing off a thatched roof. Cows and pigs wandered about in the street ditch. I shall tame and subdue them, said the northeast wind. I'll whistle around the houses and around Axel's house. I can't fail. They call it Gallows Castle on Thieves' Island. Then Godfather showed a picture of it, which he himself had drawn. On the wall were rows of stakes, and on every stake was the head of a captured pirate showing its teeth. That really happened, said Godfather, and it's worth hearing and worth knowing about. Bishop Absalon was in his bath, and through the thin walls he heard the arrival of a ship of freebooters. He instantly sprang out of the bath and into his ship, blew his horn, and his crew assembled. The arrows shot into the backs of the robbers as they rowed desperately to escape. The arrows pierced into their hands, and there was no time to pull them out. Bishop Absalon caught everyone and cut their heads off, and every head was set up on the outer wall of the castle. The northeast wind blew with puffed-out cheeks, with bad weather in his jaw, as the sailors say. I'll stretch myself, said the wind. Here I'll lie down and look the whole matter over. It rested for hours, then blew for days. Years went past. The watchman appeared on the castle tower. He looked to the east, the west, the north, and the south. You can see it there, in the picture, said Godfather, pointing it out. You can see him there, but I'll tell you what he saw. There is open water from the wall of Steileborg, right out to Kjöge Bay, and a broad channel over to the coast of Zeeland. In front of Seritzlev and Solberg, meadows with their large villages. The new town, with its gobbled timber houses, is growing up more and more. There are entire streets for shoemakers and tailors, for grocers and beer sellers. There is a marketplace, and there is a guild hall. And near the shore, Where there was once an island stands the splendid church of St. Nicholas. It has an immensely high tower and spire. How it is reflected in the clear water. Near this is Our Lady's Church, where masses are sung, where incense gives out its fragrance and wax candles burn. The merchant's haven is now the bishop's town. The Bishop of Roskilde rules and reigns there. Bishop Erlandsen sits in Axel's house. There is good cooking in the kitchen. Ale and claret are served to the sound of fiddles and kettle drums. Burning candles and lamps make the castle shine as if it were a lantern for the whole country and kingdom. The northeast wind whistles around the tower and walls, but they stand firmly. The northeast wind swoops around the western fortification of the town. Only an old wooden fence, but it holds up well. Christopher Bury, King of Denmark, stands outside it. The rebels have beaten him at Skellskor, so he seeks shelter in the bishop's town. The wind whistles and says like the bishop, "Keep out, keep out. The gate is shut to you." It is a time of trouble. Dismal days when every man is his own master. The Holstein banner waves from the castle tower. There is want and woe, for it is the night of anguish. War and the Black Death stalk the land in the pitch-dark night. But then comes Valdemar Atterdag. Now the bishop's town is the king's town. It has gabled houses and narrow streets, watchmen, and a town hall, and a permanent gallows by the west port. No man from out of town can be hanged on it. You must be a citizen to be allowed to dangle there, to get so high as to see Kjöga and the hens of Kjöga. "That's a lovely gallows," says the northeast wind. "The beautiful is growing, and it whistles and whoops." And from Germany blew trouble and want. The Hanseatic merchants came, continued Godfather from warehouse and counter, the rich traders of Rostock, Lübeck, and Bremen. They wanted to seize more than the golden goose from Valdemar's tower. They had more power in the town of the Danish king than the Danish king himself. They came in armed ships, and no one was prepared. And King Eric had no desire to fight with his German kinsfolk. They were too many and too strong. So King Eric and all his courtiers escaped through the west port to the town of Soro, to the quiet lake and green forests, to the song of love and the clang of goblets. But there was one left behind in Copenhagen, a kingly heart and a kingly mind. Do you see this picture here? This young woman, so fine and tender, with sea blue eyes and yellow hair. It is the Queen of Denmark, Philippa, the English princess. She stayed in the distracted city, where the townspeople swarmed in panic in the narrow lanes and streets with steep stairs, sheds, and shops of lath and plaster. With the courage of a man, she summoned townspeople and peasants to inspire and encourage them. They fitted out the ships and garrisoned the blockhouses. They fired with their carbines. There were fire and smoke and lightness of spirit. Our Lord will never forsake Denmark. The sun shone into all hearts, and in all eyes was the bright gladness of victory. Blessed be Philippa. Blessed she was in hut and in house. And blessed she was in the king's castle, where she nursed the wounded and the sick. I have clipped a wreath and laid it around this picture, said Godfather. Blessed be Queen Philippa. Now we spring forward for years, said Godfather, and Copenhagen springs with us. King Christian I has been to Rome to receive the Pope's blessing, and has been greeted with honor and homage on the long journey. Here at home, he is building a hall of red brick. There shall be learning, there displaying itself in Latin. The poor man's children, from plough and workshop, can also come there to live upon alms, to attain the long black gown, and sing before the doors of citizens. Near the hall of learning, where everything is in Latin, is a little house where Danish rules in language and in customs. There is beer soup for early breakfast, and dinner is at 10 o'clock in the morning. The sun shines through small panes onto cupboards and bookcases. On the shelves are written treasures. Master Mikkel's Rosary and Godly Comedies, Henrik Harpestrang's Leech Book, and Denmark's Rhyming Chronicle by Brother Niels of Sorrow. Every Danish man should know these, says the master of the house, and he is the one to make them known. He is the Dutchman, Gottfried van Gamen, Denmark's first printer, who practices the divine black art of printing. And the books enter the castle of the king and the houses of the citizens. Proverbs and songs are given immortality. Things that men dare not say, either in sorrow or in joy, are sung by the bird of folklore, allegorically and yet clearly. For it flies free and wide through the common man's room and the knightly castle. It sits and twitters like a falcon on the hand of the noble lady. It steals in like a tiny mouse and squeaks in the dungeon of the enslaved peasant. Merely words, all of it, says the sharp northeast wind. It's the spring, say the sunbeams. See how the green buds are peeping out. Now we'll turn more pages in our picture book, said Godfather. How radiant Copenhagen is. There are tournaments and sports and splendid processions. Look at the gallant knights in armor and the noble ladies in silk and gold. King Hans gives his daughter Elizabeth to the Elector of Brandenburg. How young she is, and how happy she is. She is treading on velvet. There is a whole future in her thoughts, a future of domestic happiness. Close beside her is her royal brother, Prince Christian, with the melancholy eyes and the hot, passionate blood. He is beloved by the commoners, for he knows their burdens. In his thoughts, he has the poor man's future. God alone decides our fate. Now we'll turn another leaf in the picture book, said Godfather. The wind blows sharply and sings of the sharp sword and this difficult time of trouble. It is an icy cold day in mid-April. Why is the crowd gathering outside the castle and before the old custom house where the king's ship lies with its sails and banners? People are crowded in the windows and on the roofs. There are sorrow and trouble, expectation and anxiety. They look toward the castle now so still and empty, but where formerly there were torch dances in the gilded halls. They look at the balcony from which King Christian so often gazed out over the court bridge and down the narrow court bridge street to his dovelet, the little Dutch girl he brought from the town of Bergen. The shutters are bolted. As the crowd gazed toward the castle, the gate is opened and the drawbridge is let down. There comes King Christian with his faithful wife Elizabeth. She will not forsake her royal lord now, when he is so hard pressed. There is fire in his blood and fire in his thoughts. He has wished to break with the olden times, to strike off the peasant's yoke, to do good to the commoners, to clip the wings of the greedy hawks. But they have been too much for him. He leaves his country and his kingdom to win allies and friends for himself abroad. His wife and loyal men go with him. Every eye is moist in this hour of parting. Voices are blended in the song of time against him, and for him a three-part choir. Listen to the words of the nobles. They are written and printed. Woe to you, Christian the wicked! The blood that poured out in the marketplace of Stockholm cries aloud and curses you. And the monk's cry echoes the same refrain: Be you cast off by God and by us. You have called hither the Lutheran doctrine. You have given it church and pulpit, and bid the tongue of the devil speak out, Woe to you, Christian the wicked! But the peasants and commoners weep, Christian beloved of the people. No longer may the peasant be sold like cattle, or exchanged for a hunting hound. That law shall bear you witness. But the words of the poor man are only chaff before the wind. Now the ship sails past the castle, and the commoners line the ramparts so that they may once more see the royal galley sail. The time is long. The time is hard. Trust neither in friends nor in kinsmen. Uncle Frederick, in the castle of Kiel, would like to be King of Denmark. King Frederick is before Copenhagen. See the picture here, the faithful Copenhagen. Coal-black clouds are around it, in picture after picture. Just look at each of them. It is all a resounding picture. It resounds still in song and story, those heavy, hard, and bitter times during the long procession of years. How did it go with that wandering bird, King Christian? The birds have sung about it, and they fly far over distant lands and seas. Early in the spring, the stork came from the south across the land of Germany. It had seen what I will tell you now. I saw the fugitive King Christian crossing a heather, grown moor. He met a wretched cart drawn by only one horse. A woman sat in it, his sister, the Countess of Brandenburg. Faithful to the Lutheran religion, she had been exiled by her husband. And so on that dark heath, the exiled children of a king met. The time is hard. The time is long. Trust neither friend nor kinsman. The swallow came from Sonderborg Castle with a sad song. King Christian is betrayed. He sits in the dungeon tower, deep as a well. His heavy steps wear tracks in the stone floor, and his fingers leave their marks in the hard marble. Oh, what sorrow ever found such vent, as that in the furrows of the stone the fish-eagle has come from the tossing sea, which is open and free. A ship flies over it, bearing the brave Soren Norby from Fine. Fortune is with him, but fortune is as changeable as wind and weather. In Jutland and Finn, the crows and ravens scream, we seek spoil. It is grand caw-caw. Here lie the bodies of horses, and of men too. It is a time of trouble. It is during the Count of Oldenburg's war. The peasant raises his club, and the townsman his knife, and loudly they shout, "We shall slay the wolves, and leave no cub of them alive." Clouds of smoke roll up from the burning towns. King Christian is a prisoner in Sonderborg Castle. He cannot escape or see the bitter distress of Copenhagen. On the North Common stands Christian III, where his father stood before him. Despair is in the city, and plague and famine. A ragged, emaciated woman sits reclined against the church wall. She is a corpse. 2 living children lie on her lap and can suck only blood from the dead breast. Courage has collapsed. Resistance collapses. Oh, you faithful Copenhagen! Fanfares are blown, hear the drums and trumpets, in rich garments of silk and velvet, with nodding plumes, the noble lords come on horses adorned with gold, riding to Old Market Square. Is there a customary festivity or tournament? Commoners and peasants in holiday attire flock in that direction. What is there to see? Is there a bonfire to burn popish images? Or is the hangman standing there as he stood at the death fire of Slaghoke? The king ruler of all the land is a Lutheran, and this shall now be proclaimed with solemnity. Noble ladies and high-born maidens with high collars and caps of pearls sit behind the open windows and see all the splendor. Beneath a canopy near the king's throne, the counselors of state sit in antique dress on an outspread carpet. The king is silent, but his will, the will of the council of state, is proclaimed in the Danish tongue. Commoners and peasants are sternly rebuked for the opposition they have shown to the nobility. The commoner is humbled, and the peasant becomes a slave. Now condemning words are uttered against the bishops of the land. Their power is gone, and all the property of the church and cloisters is transferred to the king and the nobles. Pride and hatred are there, and pomp and misery too. The poor bird comes limping, drooping, comes stooping. The rich bird comes huffing, comes puffing. The time of change brings heavy clouds, but sunshine too. It then shines in the halls of learning and in the student's home, and names shine from it on down to our own days. There is Hans Tosen, the son of a poor smith of Finn. This was the little lad who came from Birkenday town. His name flew over Denmark, widely spread his renown. A Danish Martin Luther, he drew the gospel sword and gained a mighty victory for truth and for the Lord. There is also the immortal name of Petrus Palladius. That is the Latin, but in Danish it is Peter Plod, Bishop of Roskilde, also the son of a poor smith of Jutland. And among noblemen shines the name of Hans Friis, Chancellor of the kingdom. He would seat the students at his own table and see to their wants, and those of the schoolboys as well. But one name above all others is greeted with cheers and song, so long as there's a student to be found. Near Axel's haven, at work or play will, King Christian's name loudly resound, and with hurrahs be greeted every day. Yes, there were sunbeams between the heavy clouds in the time of change. Now we turn the page. What is it that whistles and sings in the great belt under the coast of Samso? A mermaid with sea-green hair rises from the sea. She reveals the future to the peasant. A prince shall be born who shall become a great and powerful king. He was born in the field beneath the blossoming whitethorn. His name now lives in song and story in the nightly halls and castles everywhere. The stock exchange came forth with tower and spire. Rosenborg Castle rose up and gazed far out over the ramparts. The students got their own house, and close by, where it still points to heaven, stood the round tower, facing toward the island of Wien, where Uranienborg once stood. Its golden domes glittered in the moonlight, and the mermaids sang of the man who lived there, whom kings and sages visited, the master sage of noble blood, Tycho Brahe. He raised the name of Denmark so high that it was known with the stars of heaven in all the cultured lands of the earth. And Denmark turned him away. In his sorrow, he sang for comfort. Is not heaven everywhere? What more do I require? His song lives in the hearts of the people, like the mermaid's song about Christian 4. Now comes a page that you must look at carefully, said Godfather. There is picture after picture here, just as there is verse after verse in the old ballads. It is a song so happy in its beginning, so sorrowful at its close. A king's child is dancing in the castle of the king. How lovely she is to look at. She is sitting on the lap of Christian 4, his beloved daughter Eleanor. She grows in all the virtues and graces of a woman. The foremost among the nobles, Corfitz Ulfelt, is her betrothed. She is still only a child and is beaten by her stern governess. She complains of this to her sweetheart, and rightly too. How clever and cultured and learned she is. She can speak Latin and Greek, sing in Italian to her lute, and talk about the Pope and Martin Luther. Now King Christian lies in the vault in Roskilde Cathedral, and Eleanor's brother is king. In the palace at Copenhagen, there are pomp and show. There are beauty and wit. And foremost is the queen herself, Sophie Amalie of Leinborg, who can guide her horse as cleverly as she, who dances with such grace, who can talk with such wisdom and wit as the Queen of Denmark, Eleanor Christine Ulfelt. These are the words of the French ambassador. She surpasses all in beauty and wit. Up from the polished floor of the palace ballroom has grown the burdock of envy. It has clung there, worked itself in, and twisted around, contempt and scorn. That illegitimate creature, her carriage shall stop at the bridge of the castle. Where the queen drives, the commoner shall walk. There is a storm of gossip, of lies and slander. Then Ulfelt takes his wife by the hand in the still of the night. He has the keys to the town gates. He opens one of them, and horses wait outside. They ride to the shore and sail to Sweden. Now let's turn the page, just as fortune turned itself for those two. It is autumn. The days are short, and the nights are long. It is gray and damp. The cold wind rises in its strength, and it whistles through the leaves of the trees on the ramparts. The leaves drop into Peter Ox's courtyard, empty and forsaken of its owners. The wind sweeps over Christianshavn, around the mansion of Kai Laika, which now is a penitentiary. He himself has been driven from home and honor. His escutcheon is smashed, and his effigy hung on the highest gallows. Thus is he punished for his thoughtless, frivolous words about the powerful Queen of Denmark. The wind pipes loudly as it rushes over the open space where the mansion of the Lord High Steward once stood. Only one stone of it is now left. And that I drove down here as a boulder on the floating ice, shrieks the wind. That stone stranded where since has grown Thieves' Island under my curse. And so it became a part of the mansion of Lord Ulfelt, where his lady sang to the sounding lute and read Greek and Latin and bore herself proudly. Now only the stone is here with its inscription, the traitor, Corfitz Ulfelt, in eternal scorn, shame and disgrace. But where is the stately lady now? Hoo-ee-oo, blows the wind with a piercing shriek. For many years, she has been shut up in the blue tower behind the palace, where the seawater beats against the slimy walls. There is more smoke than warmth in the cell. Its tiny window is high up under the ceiling. In what discomfort and misery sits the adored child of Christian IV, the daintiest of maids and matrons. Memory hangs curtains and tapestries on the smoke-blackened walls of her prison. She recalls the lovely days of her childhood, her father's gentle, beaming face. She recalls her splendid wedding, her days of pride, but also her days of misery in Holland, England, and Bornholm. Nothing seems too hard for wedded love to bear, and loyalty is not cause for shame or care. But he was with her in those days. Now she is alone, alone forever. She does not know his grave. No one knows it. Faithfulness to her husband was her only crime. For long and many years, she sat there while life went on outside. Life never pauses, but we will, for a moment here, and think of her and the words of the song. I keep my promise to my husband still, in want and dire need, and always will. Now do you see this picture here? Said Godfather. It's winter, and the frost has thrown a bridge of ice between Laaland and Finn, a bridge for Carl Gustav, who pushes on unchecked. There are plundering and burning fear and want throughout the whole land. Now the Swedes are encamped before Copenhagen. It is bitterly cold, and the snow is blinding, but true to their king and themselves, men and women stand ready to fight. Every tradesman, shopman, student, and schoolmaster is on the ramparts, ready to guard and defend, with no fear of the red-hot cannonballs. King Frederick has sworn he will die in his nest. There he rides to and fro, and the Queen is with him, and courage, patriotism, and discipline are there. Let the Swede don his white shroud, and crawl forward in the white snow, and try to storm the walls. Beams and stones are hurled down on him. Even women come with steaming cauldrons and pour boiling pitch and tar onto the storming enemy. That night, king and peasant are one united power. Then there is relief, and there is victory. Church bells ring, and songs of thanksgiving resound. Commoners, on this spot you won your knightly spurs. What comes next? Look at this picture. Bishop Svan's wife drives in a closed carriage, which only the high and mighty nobility dare do. The proud young men stop the carriage. The bishop's wife must walk to the bishop's house. Is that the whole story? Something much greater is stopped next. The power of pride. Burgomaster Hans Nansen and Bishop Svan clasp hands to work in the name of the Lord. Their wise and honest talk is heard in the church and the house of the commoner. One hand clasp of fellowship, and the harbor is blocked, the gates are locked, and the alarm bell rings. Power is granted to the king alone, who remains in his nest in the hour of peril. He governs and rules over great and small. It is the time of absolute monarchy. Now, let's turn the page and time with it. Hallow, hallow, hallow. The plow stands idle, and the heather grows wild, but the hunting is good. Hallow, hallow. Listen to the sounding horn and the baying hounds. See the huntsman, and look at the young and gay, King himself. Christian 5th. There is merrymaking in palace and in town. In the halls are wax lights, in the courtyards, torches, and in the streets of the town are new lamps. Everything is so new. Favors and gifts go to the barons and counts of the new nobility brought in from Germany. Nothing is accepted now except titles and rank, and the German language. But then there sounds a voice that is truly Danish, the voice of the weaver's son, who is now a bishop. It is the voice of Kingo, singing his beautiful psalms. There is another commoner's son, this time the son of a vintner, whose thoughts shine forth in law and justice. His book of laws has become gold ground for the king's name and will stand for ages to come. That commoner's son, the greatest man in the land, receives a coat of arms, and enemies as well, so that the sword of the executioner is raised over the head of Griffenfeld. But mercy is granted with life imprisonment, and he is banished to a rocky islet off the coast of Trondheim. Munkholm, Denmark's St. Helena. But the dance continues merrily in the palace hall. There are splendor and pomp there, and courtiers and ladies dance to lively music. Now these are the times of Frederick IV. See the proud ships with their flags of victory. See the tossing sea. It can tell of great deeds for the glory of Denmark. We remember the victorious Sehested and Gildenlove. We remember Hvitfeldt, who blew up his ship to save the Danish fleet and flew to heaven with Dannebrog. We think of the struggles of those ages and of the hero who sprang to the defense of Denmark from the mountains of Norway, Peder Tordenskjold. Across the surging sea, his name thunders from country to country. Lightning flashed through the powder dust. A thunderbolt roared through the whispering age. A tailor's boy jumped down from the tailor's table. From Norway's coast, he sailed a little sloop. And over northern seas, there flew again the Viking spirit, youthful and clad in steel. Then a fresh breeze blew from the coast of Greenland, bringing a gentle fragrance, as if from the land of Bethlehem. It brought tidings of the gospel light, kindled by Hans Egede and his wife. So this half page has a golden ground, but the other half, which means sorrow, is ashen gray with black specks, as from fire and disease and pestilence. The plague is raging in Copenhagen. The streets are empty. The doors are barred, and where crosses are chalked on them, the plague is inside. But where the cross is black, all within are dead. The bodies are carried away by night with no tolling bell. The half-dead in the streets are taken with them. Funeral wagons rumble, piled with corpses. But from the taverns sound the horrid songs and wild shrieks of the drunkards. They try to forget their bitter in drink. They want to forget and end. Yes, everything comes to an end. The page ends here with the second time of distress and trial for Copenhagen. King Frederick IV is still alive. The course of the years has turned his hair gray. From the window of his palace, he looks out on the stormy weather of late winter. In a little house near the west gate, a boy is playing with his ball. It bounces up into the loft. The child takes a candle and goes up to seek it, but he sets fire to the little house, to the whole street. The fire leaps into the air so that the clouds themselves reflect it. See how the flames grow higher. There is food for the fire, hay and straw bacon and tar piles of firewood for winter. And it all burns there is weeping, shrieking. There is great panic. The old king rides through the tumult, commanding and encouraging. There is blowing up with gunpowder and the tearing down of houses. Now the fire has swept into the north quarter, and the churches are burning St. Peter's and Our Lady's. Listen to the bells playing their last tune. Turn from us thy wrath, O Lord God of mercy. Only the round tower and the castle are left standing, with smoking ruins about them. King Frederick is kind to the people. He is a friend to the homeless. He comforts and feeds them, and is with them constantly. Blessed be Frederick IV. Now look at this page. See that gilded carriage with footmen around it, and armed riders before and behind it, coming from the castle, where an iron chain is stretched to keep the people from coming too near. Every common man must cross the square with bare head, and therefore few are seen there. They avoid the place. There comes one now, with downcast eyes, and with hat in hand, and he is the one man of that time whom we can name with pride. His voice, like a cleansing storm, wind rang. To sunshine in the days which yet were to come. Then smuggled in tunes like grasshoppers sprang, in haste to return to where they were from. Witty and humorous, that is Ludwig Holberg, the Danish stage. The castle of his greatness has been closed, as if it were the dwelling place of shame. All merriment is banished. Dance, song, and music are forbidden and gone, for the dark side of religion is now in power. The Danish prince, his mother used to call him. Now come his days of sunshine with the song of birds, with gladness and true Danish gaiety. Frederick V is king, and the chain is taken from the square beside the castle. The Danish theater is reopened. There are laughter and pleasure and good cheer. And the peasants again hold their summer festivals, for it is a time of joy after the time of fast and oppression. The beautiful lives again blossoming and bearing fruit in sound color and creative art. Listen to Grétry's music. Watch Londemann's acting and Denmark's. Queen loves all that is Danish. God in his heaven. Bless you, beautiful and gentle Louise of England. The sunbeams sing in spirited chorus about the queens of Denmark. Philippa Elizabeth, Louise. The earthly shells have long been buried, but the souls live, and the names live. England again sends a royal bride. Mathilde, so young and so soon forsaken. In days to come, poets will sing of your youthful heart and your hours of trail. And song has an indescribable power through all times and all peoples. See the burning of the castle of King Christian. They try to save the best they can find. Look at the men from the dockyard dragging away a basket of silverware and precious things, a great treasure. But suddenly, through an open door, where the flames are brightest, they see a bronze bust of King Christian IV. Then they cast aside the treasure they are rescuing. His image means so much more to them that it must be saved, regardless of how heavy it may be to carry. They know him from the song of Ewald and the beautiful melody of Hartmann. Indeed, there is power in words and song, and someday it shall resound as strongly for the poor Queen Matilda. Now let's go further in our picture book. On Ulfeldt's place stood the stone of shame. And where in the world is there one like it? By the west gate, a column was raised. And how many in the world are there like it? The sunbeams kissed the boulder foundation of the column of freedom. All church bells rang, and the flags waved, and the people cheered for Crown Prince Frederick. The names of Bernstorff, Reventlow, Kolbjornsson were held in the hearts and were on the lips of old and young. With bright eyes and grateful hearts, they read the blessed inscription on the column. The king has decreed that serfdom shall cease, the agrarian laws be set in order and enforced, so that the free peasant may become brave and enlightened, diligent and good, a worthy and happy citizen. What a sunny day! Summer is in town. The spirits of light sang, "The good is growing. The beautiful is growing. Soon the stone on Ulfeldt's place shall fall, but the column of freedom shall stand in the sunlight, blessed by God, King, and people." We have an ancient highway. It goes to the ends of the earth. There, in the open sea, open for friend and foe, was the foe. The mighty English fleet sailed up. A great power came against a little one. The battle was hard, but the people were valiant. Each stood firm, untiring, held his place, stood and fought until death's embrace. They won the admiration of the enemy and inspired the poets of Denmark. The day of that battle is still commemorated with unfurled banners. Denmark's glorious 2nd of April, the Maundy Thursday battle at Copenhagen Harbor. Years passed. A fleet was seen in Øresund. Was it bound for Russia or for Denmark? No one knew, not even those on board the ships. There is a legend in the hearts of the people which tells that on that morning in Øresund, when the sealed orders were opened and the instructions to destroy the Danish fleet were read, a young captain stepped forward, a son of Britain noble in word and deed. "I swore Heise," he said, "that I would fight for England's flag to my death in open and honorable battle, but not overpower the weak." and with that, he jumped overboard. The fleet sailed toward Copenhagen, just the same, but far from the place where the battle was to be. Lay he the captain, and unknown is his name, an ice-cold corpse in the dark blue sea. Shoreward he drifted until Swedish men, fishing beneath the stars with their nets, found him, bore him to shore, and then cast dice to win his epaulets. The enemy made for Copenhagen. The town was soon in flames. We lost our fleet, but not our courage and faith in God. He casteth down, but he raiseth again. Our wounds healed as those of the warriors in Valhalla. The history of Copenhagen is rich in consolation. Our faith from the beginning of time to the end is that our Lord is Denmark's friend. If we hold firmly, he will hold too, and tomorrow the sun will shine on you. Soon the sun did shine on the rebuilt city, on the rich cornfields, and on the skill and art of our people. It was blessed summer day of peace, when poetry raised her Fata Morgana, so rich in color, through the words of Eulenschlager. And a great discovery was made in science. It was a discovery far greater than the gold horn of ancient days, for a bridge of gold was found, a bridge for thought to flash like lightning at all times into other lands and nations. Hans Christian Ørsted wrote his name on that bridge. And look, beside the church by the castle, a building was raised to which the poorest man and woman gladly gave their pennies. You will remember that in the first part of our picture book said, Godfather, the old stone blocks rolled down from the mountains of Norway and were carried here on the ice. They are raised up again from the sandy depths at the bidding of Thorvaldsen in marble beauty, magnificent to look at. Remember all that I have shown you, and all that I have told you. That sandbank in the sea raised itself up to become a breakwater in the harbor. It bore Axel's house and the bishop's mansion and the king's castle, and now it bears the temple of the beautiful. The words of the curse have vanished, but all that the children of sunlight sang in their gladness about the coming ages has been fulfilled. Many storms have passed. They will come again and pass again. The true and the good and the beautiful have the victory. And that finishes the picture book, but not the history of Copenhagen. Far from it. Who knows what you may live to see? It has often looked black, and storms have raged, but the sunshine has never been blown away. It remains. And stronger yet than the brightest sunshine is God. Our Lord reigns over more than Copenhagen. That is what Godfather said as he gave me the book. His eyes were shining, He was so certain of it all. And I took the book so gladly and proudly and carefully, just the way I carried my little sister for the first time. And Godfather said, "You're quite welcome to show your picture book to people, and you may also tell them that I made it, pasted it, and drew the whole thing. But it's of great importance that they know at once where I got the idea for it. You know where, so tell them the idea came from the old oil lamps which on the last evening they burned showed the new gas lights like a fata morgana, everything that had been seen from the time the first lamp was lit at the harbor until that evening when Copenhagen was lighted with both oil and gas. You may show the book to anybody you like, that is, to people with kindly eyes and friendly minds. But if a hell horse should come, then close Godfather's picture book." The Fir Tree. Far down in the forest, where the warm sun and the fresh air made a sweet resting place, grew a pretty little fir tree. And yet, it was not happy. It wished so much to be tall like its companions, the pines and firs which grew around it. The sun shone, and the soft air fluttered its leaves, and the little peasant children passed by, prattling merrily, but the fir tree heeded them not. Sometimes the children would bring a large basket of raspberries or strawberries wreathed on a straw and seat themselves near the fir tree and say, "Is it not a pretty little tree which made it feel more unhappy than before?" And yet, all this while, the tree grew a notch or joint taller every year. For by the number of joints in the stem of a fir tree, we can discover its age. Still, as it grew, it complained, "Oh, how I wish I were as tall as the other trees. Then I would spread out my branches on every side, and my top would overlook the wide world. I should have the birds building their nests on my boughs, and when the wind blew, I should bow with stately dignity, like my tall companions." The tree was so discontented that it took no pleasure in the warm sunshine, the birds, or the rosy clouds that floated over it morning and evening. Sometimes, in winter, when the snow lay white and glittering on the ground, a hare would come springing along and jump right over the little tree. And then, how mortified it would feel. 2 winters passed, and when the third arrived, the tree had grown so tall that the hare was obliged to run round it. Yet it remained unsatisfied and would exclaim, "Oh, if I could but keep on growing. Tall and old, there is nothing else worth caring for in the world." In the autumn, as usual, the woodcutters came and cut down several of the tallest trees, and the young fir tree, which was now grown to its full height, shuddered as the noble trees fell to the earth with a crash. After the branches were lopped off, the trunks looked so slender and bare that they could scarcely be recognized. Then they were placed upon wagons and drawn by horses out of the forest. Where were they going? What would become of them? The young fir tree wished very much to know. So in the spring, when the swallows and the storks came, it asked, "Do you know where those trees were taken? Did you meet them?" The swallows knew nothing, but the stork, after a little reflection, nodded his head and said, "Yes, I think I do. I met several new ships when I flew from Egypt, and they had fine masts that smelt like fir. I think these must have been the trees. I assure you, they were stately, very stately. Oh, how I wish I were tall enough to go on the sea," said the fir tree. "What is the sea, and what does it look like?" "It would take too much time to explain," said the stork, flying quickly away. "Rejoice in thy youth," said the sunbeam. "Rejoice in thy fresh growth, and the young life that is in thee." And the wind kissed the tree, and the dew watered it with tears. But the fir tree regarded them not. Christmas time drew near, and many young trees were cut down, some even smaller and younger than the fir tree, who enjoyed neither rest nor peace, with longing to leave its forest home. These young trees, which were chosen for their beauty, kept their branches, and were also laid on wagons and drawn by horses out of the forest. "Where are they going?" asked the fir tree. "They are not taller than I am. Indeed, one is much less. And why are the branches not cut off? Where are they going?" We know," sang the sparrows. "We have looked in at the windows of the houses in the town, and we know what is done with them. They are dressed up in the most splendid manner. We have seen them standing in the middle of a warm room and adorned with all sorts of beautiful things: honey cakes, gilded apples, playthings, and many hundreds of wax tapers." And then asked the fir tree, trembling through all its branches, "And then, what happens?" "We did not see any more," said the sparrows. "But this was enough for us. I wonder whether anything so brilliant will ever happen to me," thought the fir tree. "It would be much better than crossing the sea. I long for it, almost with pain. Oh, when will Christmas be here? I am now as tall and well grown as those which were taken away last year. Oh, that I were now laid on the wagon, or standing in the warm room, with all that brightness and splendor around me. Something better and more beautiful is to come after, or the trees would not be so decked out. Yes, what follows will be grander and more splendid. What can it be? I am weary with longing. I scarcely know how I feel. Rejoice with us, said the air and the sunlight. Enjoy thine own bright life in the fresh air. But the tree would not rejoice, though it grew taller every day. And winter and summer, its dark green foliage might be seen in the forest, while passers-by would say, "What a beautiful tree." A short time before Christmas, the discontented fir tree was the first to fall. As the axe cut through the stem and divided the pith, the tree fell with a groan to the earth, conscious of pain and faintness, and forgetting all its anticipations of happiness and sorrow at leaving its home in the forest. It knew that it should never again see its dear old companions, the trees, nor the little bushes and many-colored flowers that had grown by its side. Perhaps not even the birds. Neither was the journey at all pleasant. The tree first recovered itself while being unpacked in the courtyard of a house with several other trees, and it heard a man say, "We only want one, and this is the prettiest." Then came 2 servants in grand livery and carried the fir tree into a large and beautiful apartment. On the walls hung pictures, and near the great stove stood great china vases with lions on the lids. There were rocking chairs, silken sofas, large tables covered with pictures, books, and playthings worth a great deal of money. At least the children said so. Then the fir tree was placed in a large tub full of sand, but green baize hung all around it, so that no one could see it was a tub, and it stood on a very handsome carpet. How the fir tree trembled! What was going to happen to him now? Some young ladies came, and the servants helped them to adorn the tree. On one branch, they hung little bags cut out of colored paper, and each bag was filled with sweetmeats. From other branches hung gilded apples and walnuts, as if they had grown there. And above and all round were hundreds of red, blue, and white tapers, which were fastened on the branches. Dolls exactly like real babies were placed under the green leaves. The tree had never seen such things before, and at the very top was fastened a glittering star made of tinsel. Oh, it was very beautiful. This evening, they all exclaimed, "How bright it will be!" Oh, that the evening were come, thought the tree and the tapers, lighted. Then I shall know what else is going to happen. Will the trees of the forest come to see me? I wonder if the sparrows will peep in at the windows as they fly. Shall I grow faster here and keep on all these ornaments, summer and winter? But guessing was of very little use. It made his bark ache, and this pain is as bad for a slender fir tree as headache is for us. At last, the tapers were lighted, and then what a glistening blaze of light the tree presented. It trembled so with joy in all its branches that one of the candles fell among the green leaves and burnt some of them. "Help! Help!" exclaimed the young ladies. But there was no danger, for they quickly extinguished the fire. After this, the tree tried not to tremble at all, though the fire frightened him. He was so anxious not to hurt any of the beautiful ornaments, even while their brilliancy dazzled him. And now the folding doors were thrown open, and a troop of children rushed in as if they intended to upset the tree. They were followed more silently by their elders. For a moment, the little ones stood silent with astonishment, and then they shouted for joy till the room rang, and they danced merrily round the tree, while one present after another was taken from it. What are they doing? What will happen next? Thought the Fir. At last, the candles burnt down to the branches and were put out. Then the children received permission to plunder the tree. Oh, how they rushed upon it till the branches cracked, and had it not been fastened with the glistening star to the ceiling, it must have been thrown down. The children then danced about with their pretty toys, and no one noticed the tree except the children's maid, who came and peeped among the branches to see if an apple or a fig had been forgotten. A story, cried the children, pulling a little fat man towards the tree. Now we shall be in the green shade, said the man as he seated himself under it, and the tree will have the pleasure of hearing also. But I shall only relate one story. What shall it be? Ived, or Humpty Dumpty, who fell downstairs but soon got up again, and at last married a princess. Ived cried some, Humpty Dumpty cried others, and there was a fine shouting and crying out. But the fir tree remained quite still, and thought to himself, shall I have anything to do with all this? But he had already amused them as much as they wished. Then the old man told them the story of Humpty Dumpty, how he fell downstairs and was raised up again and married a princess. And the children clapped their hands and cried, tell another, for they wanted to hear the story of Ivede Avide. But they only had Humpty Dumpty. After this, the fir tree became quite silent and thoughtful. Never had the birds in the forest told such tales as Humpty Dumpty, who fell downstairs and yet married a princess. Ah, yes, so it happens in the world, thought the fir tree. He believed it all because it was related by such a nice man. Ah, well, he thought, who knows, perhaps I may fall down too and marry a princess. And he looked forward joyfully to the next evening, expecting to be again decked out with lights and playthings, gold and fruit. Tomorrow I will not tremble, thought he, I will enjoy all my splendor, and I shall hear the story of Humpty Dumpty again, and perhaps Ivede Avede. And the tree remained quiet and thoughtful all night. In the morning, the servants and the housemaid came in. Now, thought the fir, all my splendor is going to begin again. But they dragged him out of the room and upstairs to the garret, and threw him on the floor in a dark corner where no daylight shone, and there they left him. What does this mean? Thought the tree. What am I to do here? I can hear nothing in a place like this. And he had time enough to think, for days and nights passed, and no one came near him. And when at last somebody did come, it was only to put away large boxes in a corner. So the tree was completely hidden from sight, as if it had never existed. It is winter now, thought the tree. The ground is hard and covered with snow, so that people cannot plant me. I shall be sheltered here, I dare say, until spring comes. How thoughtful and kind everybody is to me. Still, I wish this place were not so dark, as well as lonely, with not even a little hare to look at. How pleasant it was out in the forest, while the snow lay on the ground, when the hare would run by, yes, and jump over me too, although I did not like it then. Oh, it is terrible lonely here. Squeak, squeak, said a little mouse, creeping cautiously towards the tree. Then came another, and they both sniffed at the fir tree and crept between the branches. Oh, it is very cold, said the little mouse, or else we should be so comfortable here. Shouldn't we, you old fir tree? I am not old, said the fir tree. There are many who are older than I am. Where do you come from? And what do you know? Asked the mice, who were full of curiosity. Have you seen the most beautiful places in the world? And can you tell us all about them? And have you been in the storeroom, where cheeses lie on the shelf and hams hang from the ceiling? One can run about on tallow candles there, and go in thin and come out fat. I know nothing of that place, said the fir tree, but I know the wood where the sun shines and the birds sing. And then the tree told the little mice all about its youth. They had never heard such an account in their lives, and after they had listened to it attentively, they said, "What a number of things you have seen. You must have been very happy." "Happy," exclaimed the fir tree, and then, as he reflected upon what he had been telling them, he said, "Ah, yes, after all, those were happy days." But when he went on and related all about Christmas Eve, and how he had been dressed up with cakes and lights, the mice said, "How happy you must have been, you old fir tree." "I am not old at all," replied the tree. "I only came from the forest this winter, I am now checked in my growth. What splendid stories you can relate, said the little mice. And the next night, 4 other mice came with them to hear what the tree had to tell. The more he talked, the more he remembered, and then he thought to himself, those were happy days, but they may come again. Humpty Dumpty fell downstairs, and yet he married the princess. Perhaps I may marry a princess too. And the fir tree thought of the pretty little birch tree that grew in the forest, which was to him a real, beautiful princess. Who is Humpty Dumpty? Asked the little mice. And then the tree related the whole story. He could remember every single word, and the little mice was so delighted with it that they were ready to jump to the top of the tree. The next night, a great many more mice made their appearance, and on Sunday, 2 rats came with them. But they said it was not a pretty story at all, and the little mice were very sorry for it, made them also think less of it. Do you know only one story? Asked the rats. Only one, replied the fir tree. I heard it on the happiest evening of my life, but I did not know I was so happy at the time. We think it is a very miserable story, said the rats. Don't you know any story about bacon or tallow in the storeroom? No, replied the tree. Many thanks to you, then, replied the rats, and they marched off. The little mice also kept away after this, and the tree sighed and said, it was very pleasant when the merry little mice sat round me and listened while I talked. Now that is all past too. However, I shall consider myself happy when someone comes to take me out of this place. But would this ever happen? Yes. One morning, people came to clear out the garret. The boxes were packed away, and the tree was pulled out of the corner and thrown roughly on the garret floor. Then the servant dragged it out upon the staircase, where the daylight shone. Now, life is beginning again, said the tree, rejoicing in the sunshine and fresh air. Then it was carried downstairs and taken into the courtyard so quickly that it forgot to think of itself and could only look about. There was so much to be seen. The court was close to a garden where everything looked blooming. Fresh and fragrant roses hung over the little palings. The linden trees were in blossom, while the swallows flew here and there, crying, twit, 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 my mate is coming. But it was not the fir tree they meant. Now I shall live, cried the tree, joyfully spreading out its branches. But alas, they were all withered and yellow, and it lay in a corner amongst weeds and nettles. The star of gold paper still stuck in the top of the tree and glittered in the sunshine. In the same courtyard, 2 of the merry children were playing, who had danced round the tree at Christmas and had been so happy. The youngest saw the gilded star and ran and pulled it off the tree. "Look what is sticking to the ugly old fir tree," said the child, treading on the branches till they crackled under his boots. And the tree saw all the fresh, bright flowers in the garden, and then looked at itself and wished it had remained in the dark corner of the garret. It thought of its fresh youth in the forest of the merry Christmas evening, and of the little mice who had listened to the story of Humpty Dumpty. "Past, past," said the old tree. "Oh, had I but enjoyed myself while I could have done so, but now it is too late." Then a lad came and chopped the tree into small pieces till a large bundle lay in a heap on the ground. The pieces were placed in a fire under the copper, and they quickly blazed up brightly, while the tree sighed so deeply that each sigh was like a pistol shot. Then the children who were at play came and seated themselves in front of the fire, and looked at it, and cried, "Pop, pop." But at each pop, which was a deep sigh, the tree was thinking of a summer day in the forest, and of Christmas evening, and of Humpty Dumpty, the only story it had ever heard or knew how to relate, till at last it was consumed. The boys still played in the garden, and the youngest wore the golden star on his breast with which the tree had been adorned during the happiest evening of its existence. Now all was past. The tree's life was past, and the story also. For all stories must come to an end at last. Beautiful. Alfred the sculptor. Yes, you know him, don't you? We all know him. He was awarded the gold medal, traveled to Italy, and came home again. He was young then. In fact, he is still young, though he is 10 years older than he was at that time. After he returned home, he visited one of the little provincial towns on the island of Zealand. The whole village knew who the stranger was, and in his honor, one of the richest families gave a party. Everyone of any importance or owning any property was invited. It was quite an event, and all the village knew about it without its being announced by the town crier. Apprentice boys and the children of poor people, and even some of their parents, stood outside the house looking at the lighted windows with their drawn curtains. And the watchman could imagine that he was giving the party. There were so many people in his street. There was an air of festivity everywhere, and inside the house too, for Mr. Alfred the sculptor was there. He talked and told stories, and everybody listened to him with pleasure and enthusiasm, but none more so than the elderly widow of a state official. As far as Mr. Alfred was concerned, she was like a blank sheet of gray blotting paper, absorbing everything that was said and demanding more. She was highly susceptible and unbelievably ignorant, a sort of female Caspar Hauser. "I should love to see Rome," she said. "It must be a wonderful city, with all the many strangers continually arriving there. Now do tell us what Rome is like. How does the city look when you come in by the gate? It is not easy to describe it, said the young sculptor. There's a great open place, and in the middle of it there is an obelisk that is 4,000 years old. An organist cried the lady who had never heard the word obelisk. Some of the guests could hardly keep from laughing, among them the sculptor, but the smile that rose to his lips quickly faded away, for he saw, close by the lady, a pair of her dark blue eyes. They belonged to the daughter of the lady who had been talking, and anyone with such a daughter could not really be silly. The mother was like a fountain of questions, and the daughter, who listened silently, might pass for the naiad of the fountain. How beautiful she was! She was something for a sculptor to look at, but not to speak with, for indeed she talked, but very little. Has the Pope a large family? Asked the lady. And the young man answered considerately, as if the question had been put differently. No, he doesn't come of a very great family. That's not what I mean, said the lady. I mean, does he have a wife and children? The Pope isn't allowed to marry, he replied. I don't approve of that, said the lady. She might well have talked and questioned him more intelligently, but if she hadn't said and asked what she did, would her daughter have leaned so gracefully on her shoulder, looking straight before her, with an almost melancholy smile on her lips? And Mr. Alfred told them of the glorious colors of Italy, the purple of the mountains, the blue of the Mediterranean, the blue of the southern skies, a beauty that could only be surpassed in the north by the deep blue eyes of a maiden. This he said with peculiar meaning, but she, who should have understood it, looked quite unconscious, and that too was charming. Ah, Italy, sighed some of the guests. Traveling, sighed others. Charming, charming. Well, said the widow, if I win $50,000 in the lottery, we'll travel, my daughter and I. You, Mr. Alfred, must be our guide. We'll all three go with just 1 or 2 good friends with us. Then she smiled in such a friendly manner at the company that each of them could imagine he was the person who would accompany them to Italy. Yes, we'll go to Italy, but not to the parts where the robbers are. We'll stay in Rome and only travel by the great highways where we'll be safe. And the daughter sighed very gently. And how much may lie in one little sigh, or be read into it? The young man read a great deal into it. Those 2 blue eyes, bright that evening in his honor, must conceal treasures of heart and mind, rarer than all the glories of Rome. When he left the party, he had lost his heart, lost it completely to the young lady. Now the widow's house was where Mr. Alfred the sculptor could most frequently be found. It was understood that his calls were not for the lady herself, though he and she did all the talking. He really came for the sake of the daughter. They called her Kala. Her real name was Karen Malene, but the two names had been contracted into the single name Kala. She was extremely, but some people said she was rather dull and probably slept late in the mornings. She has been accustomed to that since childhood, said her mother. She is as beautiful as Venus, and a beauty always tires easily. She does sleep rather late, but that's what makes her eyes so bright. What a power there was in these clear eyes, these deep blue eyes. Still waters run deep. The young man felt the truth of that proverb, and his heart sank into the depths. He spoke of his adventures, and Mama always asked the same naive and pertinent questions she had asked at their first meeting. It was a delight to hear Mr. Alfred speak. He told them of Naples, of trips to Mount Vesuvius, and showed them colored prints of some of the eruptions. The widow had never heard of such things before, much less taken time to think about them. "Mercy, save us," she said. "So that's a burning mountain. But isn't it dangerous for the people who live there?" "Entire cities have been destroyed," he answered. "For example, Pompeii and Herculaneum. Oh, the poor people. And you saw all that yourself?" "Well, no. I didn't see any of the eruptions shown in these pictures. But I'll show you a drawing I made of an eruption. I did see." He laid a pencil sketch on the table. And when Mama, who had been studying the highly colored prints, glanced at the black and white drawing, she cried in amazement. "When you saw it, did it throw up white fire?" For a moment, Alfred's respect for Kala's mama nearly vanished. But then, dazzled by the light from Kala, he decided it was natural for the old lady to have no eye for color. After all, it didn't matter, for Kala's mama had the most wonderful thing of all. She had Kala herself, and Alfred and Kala were engaged, which was inevitable. And the engagement was announced in the town newspaper. Mama brought 30 copies of the paper so she could cut out the announcement and send it to her friends. The betrothed couple were happy, and the mama-in-law-to-be was happy too. She said it seemed like being related to Thorvaldsen himself. "At any rate, you are his successor," she told Alfred. And it seemed to Alfred that Mama had this time really said something clever. Kala said nothing, but her eyes sparkled. Her every gesture was graceful. Yes, she was beautiful. That cannot be repeated too often. Alfred made busts of Kala and his future mama-in-law. They sat for him and watched how he molded and smoothed the soft clay between his fingers. "I suppose it's only for us that you do this work," said mama-in-law-to-be, "and don't have your servant do all that dabbing together." "No, I have to mold the clay myself," he explained. "Oh yes, you're always so exceedingly polite," said Mama, while Kala silently pressed his hand, still soiled by the clay. Then he unfolded to both of them the loveliness of nature in creation, explaining how the living stood higher in the scale than the dead, how the plant was above the mineral, the animal above the plant, and man above the animal, how mind and beauty are united in outward form, and how it was the task of the sculptor to seize that beauty and imprison it in his works. Kala sat silent and nodded approval of the thought, while Mama-in-law confessed, "It's hard to follow all that, but my thoughts manage to hobble slowly along after you. They whirl around, but I try to hold them fast." And the power of Kala's beauty held Alfred fast, seizing him and mastering him and filling his whole soul. There was beauty in Kala's every feature. It sparkled in her eyes, lurked in the corners of her mouth, and even in each movement of her fingers. The sculptor saw this. He spoke only of her thought, only of her, until the two became one. Thus, it might be said that she also spoke often, for he was always talking of her, and they two were one. Such was the betrothal. And now came the wedding day, with bridesmaids and presents, all duly mentioned in the wedding speech. Mama-in-law had set up a bust of Thorvaldsen, attired in a dressing gown at one end of the table, for it was her whim that he was to be a guest. There were songs and toasts, for it was a gay wedding, and they were a handsome pair. "Pygmalion gets his Galatea," one of the songs said. "That is something from mythology," said Mama-in-law. Next day, the young couple left for Copenhagen, where they were to live. Mama-in-law went with them to give them a helping hand, she explained, which meant to take charge of the house. Kala was to live in a doll's house. Everything was so bright, new, and fine. There the three of them and as for Alfred, to use a proverb that describes his circumstances, he sat like the bishop in the goose yard. The magic of form had fascinated him. He had regarded the case and had no interest in learning what the case contained. And that is unfortunate, very unfortunate in married life. If the case breaks and the gilding rubs off, the purchaser may repent of his bargain. It is very embarrassing to discover in a large party that one's suspender buttons are coming off, and that one has no belt to fall back on. But it is still worse to realize at a great party that one's wife and mother-in-law are talking nonsense. and that one cannot think of a clever piece of wit to cover up the stupidity of it. The young couple often sat hand in hand, he speaking, and she letting drop a word now and then, with always the same melody, like a clock striking the same 2 or 3 notes constantly. It was really a mental relief when one of her friends, Sophie, came to visit them. Sophie wasn't pretty. To be sure, she was not deformed. Kayla always said she was a little crooked, but no one but a female friend would have noticed that. She was a very level-headed girl and had no idea that she might ever become dangerous here. Her visits brought a fresh breath of air into the doll's house air that they all agreed was certainly needed there. But they felt they needed more airing, so they came out into the air, and Mama-in-law and the young couple traveled to Italy. Thank heaven, we are back in our own home again, said both mother and daughter when they and Alfred returned home a year later. Traveling is no fun, said Mama-in-law. On the contrary, it's very tiring. Pardon me for saying so. I found the time dragged even though I had my children with me. And it is expensive, very expensive to travel. All those galleries you have to see, and all the things you have to look at. You must do it for self-protection, because when you get back, people are sure to ask you about them, and then they're sure to tell you that you've missed the most worthwhile things. I got so tired at last of those everlasting Madonnas. I thought I would turn into a Madonna myself. And the food one gets, said Kala. Yes, agreed Mama. Not even a dish of honest meat soup. It is awful the way they cook. And Kala had become tired from traveling. She was always tired. That was the trouble. Sophie came to live with them, and her presence was a real help. Mama-in-law had to admit that Sophie understood both housekeeping and art, though you would hardly have expected a knowledge of the last from a person of her modest background. Moreover, she was honest and loyal. She showed that clearly when Kala lay sick, fading away. If the case is everything that case should be strong, or it is all over. And it was all over with the case. Kala died. She was so beautiful, said Mama. She was very different from the antiques because they're all so damaged. Kala was completely perfect, just as a beauty should be. Alfred wept, and the mother wept, and both went into mourning. The black dresses became Mama very well, so she wore her mourning the longer. Moreover, she soon experienced another grief when she saw Alfred marry again. And he married Sophie, who had no looks at all. He has gone from one extreme to the other, said Mama-in-law. Gone from the most beautiful to the ugliest. How could he forget his first wife. Men have no constancy. Now my husband was entirely different, and he died before I did. Pygmalion got his Galatea, said Alfred. Yes, that's what the wedding song said. I really fell in love with a beautiful statue which came to life in my arms. But the soulmate that heaven sends down to us, one of its angels, who can comfort and sympathize with and uplift us, I have not found or won till now. You came to me, Sophie, not in the glory of superficial beauty, but fair enough, prettier than was necessary. The most important thing is still the most important. You came to teach a sculptor that his work is only clay and dust, only the outward form in a fabric that passes away, and that we must seek the spirit within. Poor Kala ours was but a wayfarer's life. In the next world, where we shall come together through sympathy, we shall probably be half strangers to each other. That was not spoken kindly, said Sophie. Not like a true Christian. In the next world, where there is no marriage, but where, as you say, souls find each other through sympathy, where everything beautiful is developed and elevated, her soul may attain such completeness that it may resound far more melodiously than mine. Then you will again utter the first exciting cry of your love, beautiful, beautiful. Ole the Tower-Keeper. In the world, it's always going up and down. And now, I can't go up any higher. So said Ole the Tower-Keeper. Most people have to try both the ups and the downs. And rightly considered, we all get to be watchmen at last, and look down upon life from a height. Such was the speech of Ole, my friend, the old Tower-Keeper. A strange, talkative old fellow, who seemed to speak out everything that came into his head, and who, for all that, had many a serious thought deep in his heart. Yes, he was the child of respectable people, and there were even some who said that he was the son of a privy councillor, or that he might have been. He had studied, too, and had been assistant teacher and deputy clerk. But of what service was all that to him? In those days, he lived in the clerk's house, and was to have everything in the house, to be at free quarters, as the saying is. But he was still, so to speak, a fine young gentleman. He wanted to have his boots cleaned with patent blacking, and the clerk could only afford ordinary grease. And upon that point they split. One spoke of stinginess, the other of vanity, and the blacking became the black cause of enmity between them, and at last they parted. This is what he demanded of the world in general, namely patent blacking, and he got nothing but grease. Accordingly, he at last drew back from all men and became a hermit. but the church tower is the only place in a great city where hermitage office and bread can be found together. So he betook himself up thither and smoked his pipe as he made his solitary rounds. He looked upward and downward and had his own thoughts and told in his own way of what he read in books and in himself. I often lent him books, good books, and you may know by the company he keeps. He loved neither the English governess novels nor the French ones, which he called a mixture of empty wind and raisin stalks. He wanted biographies and descriptions of the wonders of the world. I visited him at least once a year, generally directly after New Year's Day, and then he always spoke of this and that, which the change of the year had put into his head. I will tell the story of 3 of these visits, and will reproduce his own words whenever I can remember them. First visit. Among the books which I had lately lent Ole was one which had greatly rejoiced and occupied him. It was a geological book containing an account of the boulders. Yes, they're rare old fellows, those boulders, he said, and to think that we should pass them without noticing them. And over the street, pavement the paving stones, those fragments of the oldest remains of antiquity, one walks without ever thinking about them. I have done the very thing myself. But now I look respectfully at every paving stone. Many thanks for the book. It has filled me with thought and has made me long to read more on the subject. The romance of the earth is after all the most wonderful of all romances. It's a pity one can't read the first volume of it, because it is written in a language that we don't understand. One must read in the different strata, in the pebble stones, for each separate period. Yes, it is a romance, a very wonderful romance, and we all have our place in it. We grope and ferret about, and yet remain where we are, but the ball keeps turning without emptying the ocean over us. The clod on which we move about holds and does not let us through. And then it's a story that has been acting for thousands upon thousands of years and is still going on. My best thanks for the book about the boulders. Those are fellows indeed. They could tell us something worth hearing, if they only knew how to talk. It's really a pleasure, now and then, to become a mere nothing, especially when a man is as highly placed as I am. And then to think that we all, even with patent lacquer, are nothing more than insects of a moment on that anthill. The earth, though we may be insects with stir and garters, places and offices, one feels quite a novice beside these venerable million-year-old boulders. On last New Year's Eve, I was reading the book and had lost myself in it. so completely that I forgot my usual New Year's diversion, namely, the wild hunt to Amek. Ah, you don't know what that is? The journey of the witches on broomsticks is well enough known. That journey is taken on St. John's Eve to the Brocken. But we have a wild journey also, which is national and modern, and that is the journey to Amek on the night of the New Year. All indifferent poets and poetesses, musicians, newspaper writers, and artistic notabilities, I mean those who are no good, ride in the New Year's night through the air to Amek. They sit backwards on their painting brushes or quill pens, for steel pens won't bear them. They're too stiff. As I told you, I see that every New Year's night, and could mention the majority of the riders by name. But I should not like to draw their enmity upon myself, for they don't like people to talk about their ride to Amek on quill pens. I've a kind of niece who is a fishwife, and who, as she tells me, supplies 3 respectable newspapers with the terms of abuse and vituperation they use. And she has herself been at Amek as an invited guest. But she was carried out thither, for she does not own a quill pen, nor can she ride. She has told me all about it. Half of what she said is not true, but the other half gives us information enough. When she was out there, the festivities began with a song. Each of the guests had written his own song, and each one sang his own song, for he thought that the best, and it was all one, all the same melody. Then those came marching up in little bands, who are only busy with their mouths. There were ringing bells that rang alternately, and then came the little drummers that beat their tattoo in the family circle, and acquaintance was made with those who write without putting their names, which here means as much as using grease instead of patent blacking. And then there was the beadle with his boy, and the boy was worst off, for in general he gets no notice taken of him. Then, too, there was the good street sweeper with his cart, who turns over the dustbin and calls it good, very good, remarkably good. And in the midst of the pleasure that was afforded by the mere meeting of these folks, there shot up out of the great dirt heap at Amek a stem, a tree, an immense flower, a great mushroom, a perfect roof, which formed a sort of warehouse for the worthy company. For in it hung everything they had given to the world during the old year. Out of the tree poured sparks like flames of fire. These were the ideas and thoughts borrowed from others, which they had used, and which now got free, and rushed away like so many fireworks. They played at the stick burns, and the young poets played at heartburns, and the witlings played off their jests, and the jests rolled away with a thundering sound, as if empty pots were being shattered against doors. It was very amusing, my niece said. In fact, she said many things that were very malicious, but very amusing, but I won't mention them, for a man must be good-natured and not a carping critic. But you will easily perceive that when a man once knows the rights of the journey to Amak, as I know them, it's quite natural that on the New Year's night, one should look out to see the wild chase go by. If in the new year I miss certain persons who used to be there, I am sure to notice others who are new arrivals. But this year, I omitted taking my look at the guests I bowled away on. The boulders rolled back through millions of years and saw the stones break loose high up in the north, saw them drifting about on icebergs long before Noah's Ark was constructed, saw them sink down to the bottom of the sea and reappear with a sandbank, with that one that peered forth from the flood and said, "This shall be Zealand." I saw them become the dwelling place of birds that are unknown to us, and then become the seat of wild chiefs of whom we know nothing, until with their axes they cut their runic signs into a few of these stones, which then came into the calendar of time. But as for me, I had gone quite beyond all lapse of time, and had become a cipher and a nothing. Then 3 or 4 beautiful falling stars came down, which cleared the air and gave my thoughts another direction. You know what a falling star is, do you not? The learned men are not at all clear about it. I have my own ideas about shooting stars, as the common people in many parts call them. And my idea is this: how often are silent thanksgivings offered up for one who has done a good and noble action? The thanks are often speechless, but they are not lost for all that. I think these thanks are caught up, and the sunbeams bring the silent, hidden thankfulness over the head of the benefactor. And if it be a whole people that has been expressing its gratitude through a long lapse of time, the thankfulness appears as a nosegay of flowers, and at length falls in the form of a shooting star over the good man's grave. I am always very much pleased when I see a shooting star, especially in the New Year's night, and then find out for whom the gift of gratitude was intended. Lately, a gleaming star fell in the southwest as a tribute of thanksgiving to many, many. For whom was that star intended? Thought I. It fell, no doubt, on the hill by the Bay of Plensburg, where the Dannebrog waves over the graves of Schleppegrell Laszlos and their comrades. One star also fell in the midst of the land, fell upon sorrow, a flower on the grave of Holberg, the thanks of the year from a great many, thanks for his charming plays. It is a great and pleasant thought to know that a shooting star falls upon our graves. On mine, certainly none will fall. no sunbeam brings thanks to me, for here there is nothing worthy of thanks. I shall not get the patent lacquer, said Ole, for my fate on earth is only Greece after all. Second visit. It was New Year's Day, and I went up on the tower. Ole spoke of the toasts that were drunk on the transition from the old year into the new, from one grave into the other, as he said. And he told me a story about the glasses, and this story had a very deep meaning. It was this: when on the New Year's night the clock strikes 12, the people at the table rise up with full glasses in their hands and drain these glasses and drink success to the new year. They begin the year with the glass in their hands. That is a good beginning for drunkards. They begin the new year by going to bed, and that's a good beginning for drones. Sleep is sure to play a great part in the new year, and the glass likewise. Do you know what dwells in the glass? Asked Ole. I will tell you. There dwell in the glass first health, and then pleasure, then the most complete sensual delight, and misfortune, and the bitterest woe dwell in the glass also. Now suppose we count the glasses. Of course, I count the different degrees in the glasses for different people. You see, the first glass, that's the glass of health, and in that, the herb of health is found growing. Put it up on the beam in the ceiling, and at the end of the year, you may be sitting in the arbor of health. If you take the second glass, from this, a little bird soars upward, twittering in guileless cheerfulness, so that a man may listen to his song and perhaps join in. Fair is life, no downcast looks. Take courage and march onward. Out of the third glass rises a little winged urchin, who cannot certainly be called an angel child, for there is goblin blood in his veins, and he has the spirit of a goblin, not wishing to hurt or harm you indeed, but very ready to play off tricks upon you. He'll sit at your ear and whisper merry thoughts to you. He'll creep into your heart and warm you so that you grow very merry and become a wit so far as the wits of the others can judge. In the fourth glass is neither herb bird nor urchin. In that glass is the pause drawn by reason, and one may never go beyond that sign. Take the fifth glass, and you will weep at yourself. You will feel such a deep emotion, or it will affect you in a different way. Out of the glass there will spring with a bang Prince Carnival 9 times, and extravagantly merry. He'll draw you away with him. You'll forget your dignity, if you have any, and you'll forget more than you should or ought to forget. All is dance song and sound. The masks will carry you away with them, and the daughters of vanity, clad in silk and satin, will come with loose hair and alluring charms. But tear yourself away if you can. The sixth glass. Yes, in that glass sits a demon in the form of a little well-dressed, attractive, and very fascinating man who thoroughly understands you, agrees with you in everything, and becomes quite a second self to you. He has a lantern with him to give you light as he accompanies you home. There is an old legend about a saint who was allowed to choose one of the 7 deadly sins, and who accordingly chose drunkenness, which appeared to him the least, but which led him to commit all the other 6. The man's blood is mingled with that of the demon. It is the 6th glass, and with that, the germ of all evil shoots up within us, and each one grows up with a strength like that of the grains of mustard seed, and shoots up into a tree, and spreads over the whole world. And most people have no choice but to go into the oven to be recast in a new form. That's the history of the glasses, said the Tower-Keeper. Ole. And it can be told with lacquer or only with grease, but I give it you with both. Third visit. On this occasion, I chose the general moving day for my visit to Ole, for on that day it is anything but agreeable down in the streets in the town, for they are full of sweepings, shreds, and remnants of all sorts, to say nothing of the cast-off rubbish in which one has to wade about. But this time, I happened to see 2 children playing in this wilderness of sweepings. They were playing at going to bed, for the occasion seemed especially favorable for this sport. They crept under the straw and drew an old bit of ragged curtain over themselves by way of coverlet. It was splendid, they said, but it was a little too strong for me. And besides, I was obliged to mount up on my visit to Ole. It's moving day today, he said. Streets and houses are like a dustbin, a large dustbin, but I'm content with a cartload. I may get something good out of that, and I really did get something good out of it once. Shortly after Christmas, I was going up the street. It was rough weather, wet and dirty, the right kind of weather to catch cold in. The dustman was there with his cart, which was full, and looked like a sample of streets on moving day. At the back of the cart stood a fir tree, quite green still, and with tinsel on its twigs. It had been used on Christmas Eve, and now it was thrown out into the street, and the dustman had stood it up at the back of his cart. It was droll to look at, or you may say it was mournful. All depends on what you think of when you see it. And I thought about it, and thought this and that of many things that were in the cart, or I might have done so, and that comes to the same thing. There was an old lady's glove, too. I wonder what that was thinking of. Shall I tell you? The glove was lying there, pointing with its little finger at the tree. I'm sorry for the tree, it thought. And I was also at the feast, where the chandeliers glittered. My life was, so to speak, a ball night, a pressure of the hand, and I burst. My memory keeps dwelling upon that, and I have really nothing else to live for. This is what the glove thought, or what it might have thought. That's a stupid affair with yonder fir tree, said the potsherds. You see, potsherds think everything is stupid. When one is in the dust cart, they said, one ought not to give one's self airs and wear tinsel. I know that I have been useful in the world, far more useful than such a green stick. This was a view that might be taken, and I don't think it quite a peculiar one. But for all that, the fir tree looked very well. It was like a little poetry in the dust heap. And truly, there is dust enough in the streets on moving day. The way is difficult and troublesome then, and I feel obliged to run away out of the confusion. Or if I am on the tower, I stay there and look down, and it is amusing enough. There are the good people below playing at changing houses. They toil and tug away with their goods and chattels, and the household goblin sits in an old tub and moves with them. All the little griefs of the lodging and the family and the real cares and sorrows move with them out of the old dwelling into the new. And what gain is there for them or for us in the whole affair? Yes, there was written long ago the good old maxim, think on the great moving day of death. That is a serious thought. I hope it is not disagreeable to you that I should have touched upon it. Death is the most certain messenger after all, in spite of his various occupations. Yes, death is the omnibus conductor, and he is the passport writer, and he countersigns our service book, and he is director of the savings bank of life. Do you understand me? All the deeds of our life, the great and the little alike, we put into this savings bank. And when death calls with his omnibus, and we have to step in and drive with him into the land of eternity, then on the frontier, he gives us our service book as a pass. As a provision for the journey, he takes this or that good deed we have done and lets it accompany us. And this may be very pleasant or very terrific. Nobody has ever escaped the omnibus journey. There is certainly a talk about one who was not allowed to go. They call him the Wandering Jew. He has to ride behind the omnibus. If he had been allowed to get in, he would have escaped the clutches of the poets. Just cast your mind's eye into that great omnibus. The society is mixed, for king and beggar, genius and idiot sit side by side. They must go without their property and money. They have only the service book and the gift out of the savings bank with them. But which of our deeds is selected and given to us? Perhaps quite a little one that we have forgotten, but which has been recorded, small as a pea, but the pea can send out a blooming shoot. The poor bumpkin, who sat on a low stool in the corner and was jeered at and flouted, will perhaps have his worn-out stool given him as a provision, and the stool may become a litter in the land of eternity, and rise up then as a throne gleaming like gold and blooming as an arbor. He who always lounged about and drank the spiced draught of pleasure that he might forget the wild things he had done here will have his barrel given to him on the journey, and will have to drink from it as they go on. And the drink is bright and clear, so that the thoughts remain pure, and all good and noble feelings are awakened, and he sees and feels what in life he could not or would not see. And then he has within him the punishment, the gnawing worm, which will not die through time, incalculable. If on the glasses there stood written oblivion, on the barrel remembrance is inscribed. When I read a good book, an historical work, I always think at last of the poetry of what I am reading, and of the omnibus of death and wonder, which of the hero's deeds death took out of the savings bank for him, and what provisions he got on the journey into eternity. There was once a French king. I have forgotten his name, for the names of good people are sometimes forgotten even by me, but it will come back someday. There was a king who, during a famine, became the benefactor of his people, and the people raised up to his memory a monument of snow with the inscription, "Quicker than this melts, didst thou bring help." I fancy that death, looking back upon the monument, gave him a single snowflake as provision, a snowflake that never melts, and this flake floated over his royal head like a white butterfly into the land of eternity. Thus, too, there was Louis XI. I have remembered his name, for one remembers what is bad. A trait of him often comes into my thoughts, and I wish one could say the story is not true. He had his Lord High Constable executed, and he could execute him right or wrong. But he had the innocent children of the constable, one 7 and the other 8 years old, placed under the scaffold, so that the warm blood of their father spurted over them, and then he had them sent to the Bastille and shut up in iron cages, where not even a coverlet was given them to protect them from the cold. And King Louis sent the executioner to them every week, and had a tooth pulled out of the head of each, that they might not be too comfortable. And the elder of the boys said, "My mother would die of grief if she knew that my younger brother had to suffer so cruelly. Therefore, pull out 2 of my teeth and spare him." The tears came into the hangman's eyes, But the king's will was stronger than the tears. And every week, 2 little teeth were brought to him on a silver plate. He had demanded them, and he had them. I fancy that death took these 2 teeth out of the savings bank of life and gave them to Louis XI to carry with him on the great journey into the land of immortality. They fly before him like 2 flames of fire. They shine and burn, and they bite him, the innocent children's teeth. Yes, that's a serious journey, the omnibus ride on the great moving day. And when is it to be undertaken? That's just the serious part of it. Any day, any hour, any minute, the omnibus may draw up. Which of our deeds will death take out of the savings bank and give to us as provision? Let us think of the moving day that is not marked in the calendar. The days of the week. The days of the week once wanted to be free to get together and have a party. But each of the 7 days was so occupied the year around that they had no time to spare. They wanted a whole extra day. But then they had that every 4 years, the intercalary day that comes in February for the purpose of keeping order in chronology. On the intercalary day, they would get together for a party. And as February is the month of carnivals, they would come in costumes of each one's taste and choice. They would eat well, drink well, make speeches, and be complimentary and disagreeable to one another in unrestrained comradeship. While the Vikings of olden times used to throw their gnawed-off bones at each other's heads during mealtime, the days of the week intended to throw jokes and sarcastic witticisms such as might be in keeping with the innocent carnival spirit. So when it was intercalary day, they assembled. Sunday foreman of the days of the week appeared in a black silk cloak. Pious people thought he was dressed for church in a minister's gown, but the worldly-minded saw that he was attired in a domino for merriment, and that the flashing carnation he wore in his buttonhole was a little red theater lantern on which it said, "All sold hour. See now that you enjoy yourselves." Monday. A young fellow related to Sunday, and very fond of pleasures, came next. He left his workshop. He said whenever he heard the music of the parade of the guard, "I must go out and listen to Offenbach's music. It doesn't go to my head or to my heart. It tickles my leg muscles. I must dance, have a few drinks, get a black eye, sleep it off, and then the next day go to work. I am the new part of the week." Tuesday is Tyre's Day, the day of strength. Yes, that I am said Tuesday. I take a firm grip on my work. I fasten Mercury's wings onto the merchant's boots, see that the wheels in the factory are oiled and turning, that the tailor sits at his table, and that the street paver is by his paving stones. Each attends to his business, for I keep my eye on all. Accordingly, I am here in a police uniform and call myself Tuesday, a well-used day. If this is a bad joke, then you others try to think of a better one. Then I come, said Wednesday. I'm in the middle of the week. The Germans call me Herr Mittwoch. I stand like a journeyman in a store and like a flower in the midst of the other esteemed days of the week. If we all march up in order, then I have 3 days before me and 3 days behind. They are like an honor guard, so I should think that I am the most prominent day in the week. Thursday appeared, dressed as a coppersmith, with a hammer and a copper kettle as a symbol of his noble descent. I am of the highest birth, he said, paganish godlike. In the northern countries, I am named after Thor, and in the southern countries, after Jupiter, who both knew how to thunder and lighten, and that has remained in the family. And then he beat his copper kettle, thereby proving his high birth. Friday was dressed as a young girl and called herself Freya, also Venus for a change, depending upon the language of the country in which she appeared. She was of a quiet, cheerful character, she said, but today she felt gay and free. For this was Intercalary Day, which, according to an old custom, gives a woman the right to dare propose to a man and not have to wait for him to propose to her. Saturday appeared as an old housekeeper with a broom and other cleaning articles. Her favorite dish was beer soup, though at this festive occasion she did not request that it be served for everyone, only that she get it, and she got it. And so the days of the week had their party. Here they are, in print, all 7 of them, ready for use as tableaus at family parties. There you can make them as funny as you wish. We give them here as a joke on February, the only month with an extra day. The Princess and the Pea. Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess, but she would have to be a real princess. He traveled all over the world to find one, but nowhere could he get what he wanted. There were princesses enough, but it was difficult to find out whether they were real ones. There was always something about them that was not as it should be. So he came home again and was sad, for he would have liked very much to have a real princess. One evening, a terrible storm came on. There was thunder and lightning, and the rain poured down in torrents. Suddenly, a knocking was heard at the city gate, and the old king went to open it. It was a princess standing out there in front of the gate. But good gracious, what a sight the rain and the wind had made her look. The water ran down from her hair and clothes. It ran down into the toes of her shoes and out again at the heels. And yet, she said that she was a real princess. Well, We'll soon find that out, thought the old queen. But she said nothing went into the bedroom, took all the bedding off the bedstead, and laid a pea on the bottom. Then she took 20 mattresses and laid them on the pea, and then 20 eider-down beds on top of the mattresses. On this, the princess had to lie all night. In the morning, she was asked how she had slept. "Oh, very badly," said she. "I have scarcely closed my eyes all night. Heaven only knows what was in the bed, but I was lying on something hard, so that I am black and blue all over my body. It's horrible." Now they knew that she was a real princess, because she had felt the pea right through the 20 mattresses and the 20 eider-down beds. Nobody but a real princess could be as sensitive as that. So the prince took her for his wife, for now he knew that he had a real princess, and the pea was put in the museum, where it may still be seen, if no one has stolen it. There, that is a true story. Pen and Inkstand. In a poet's study, somebody made a remark as he looked at the inkstand that was standing on the table. "It's strange what can come out of that inkstand. I wonder what the next thing will be." Yes, it's strange that it is said the inkstand. It's unbelievable. That's what I have always said. The inkstand was speaking to the pen and to everything else on the table that could hear it. It's really amazing what comes out of me. Almost incredible. I actually don't know myself what will come next when that person starts to dip into me. One drop from me is enough for half a piece of paper, and what may not be on it. Then I am something quite remarkable. All the works of this poet come from me. These living characters, whom people think they recognize these deep emotions, that gay humor, the charming descriptions of nature. I don't understand those myself, because I don't know anything about nature. All of that is in me. From me have come out, and still come out, that host of lovely maidens and brave knights on snorting steeds. The fact is, I assure you, I don't know anything about them myself. You are right about that, said the pen. You have very few ideas, and don't bother about thinking much at all. If you did take the trouble to think, you would understand that nothing comes out of you except a liquid. You just supply me with the means of putting down on paper what I have in me. That's what I write with. It's the pen that does the writing. Nobody doubts that, and most people know as much about poetry as an old inkstand. You haven't had much experience, retorted the inkstand. You've hardly been in service a week, and already you're half worn out. Do you imagine you're the poet? Why, you're only a servant. I have had a great many like you. Before you came, some from the goose family, and some of English make. I'm familiar with both quill pens and steel pens. Yes, I've had a great many in my service, and I'll have many more when the man who goes through the motions for me comes to write down what he gets from me. I'd be much interested in knowing what will be the next thing he gets from me. Inkpot cried the pen. Late that evening, the poet came home. He had been at a concert, had heard a splendid violinist, and was quite thrilled with his marvelous performance. From his instrument, he had drawn a golden river of melody. Sometimes it had sounded like the gentle murmur of rippling water, drops wonderful, pearl-like tones, sometimes like a chorus of twittering birds, sometimes like a tempest tearing through mighty forests of pine. The poet had fancied he heard his own heart weep, but in tones as sweet as the gentle voice of a woman. It seemed as if the music came not only from the strings of the violin, but from its sounding board, its pegs, its very bridge. It was amazing. The selection had been extremely difficult, but it had seemed as if the bow were wandering over the strings, merely in play. The performance was so easy that an ignorant listener might have thought he could do it himself. The violin seemed to sound, and the bow to play of their own accord, and one forgot the master who directed them, giving them life and soul. Yes, the master was forgotten, but the poet remembered him. He repeated his name and wrote down his thoughts. How foolish it would be for the violin and bow to boast of their achievements. And yet, we human beings often do so. Poets, artists, scientists, generals, we are all proud of ourselves, and yet we're only instruments in the hands of our Lord. To Him alone be the glory. We have nothing to be arrogant about. Yes, that is what the poet wrote down, and he titled his essay, "The Master and the Instruments." That ought to hold you. "Madam," said the pen, when the two were alone again, "did you hear him read aloud what I had written?" "Yes, I heard what I gave you to write," said the inkstand. "It was meant for you and your conceit. It's strange that you can't tell when anyone is making fun of you. I gave you a pretty sharp cut there. Surely I must know my own satire." "Inkpot," said the pen. "Scribblestick," said the inkstand. They were both satisfied with their answers, and it is a great comfort to feel that one has made a witty reply. One sleeps better afterward. So they both went to sleep. But the poet didn't sleep. His thoughts rushed forth, like the violin's tones, falling like pearls, sweeping on like a storm through the forest. He understood the sentiments of his own heart. He caught a ray of the light from the everlasting Master. To Him alone be the glory.